The UN Secretary General today called for all countries to reach net zero emissions by 2050 at their Climate Action Summit right here in New York City. This comes as protests swept the world this weekend. Demonstrators brought traffic to a standstill in the nation's capital this morning. President Trump made a surprise appearance at the UN's climate conference for about 10 minutes. But is the UN really the best organization to fight climate change? Here to break it down is Power the Future Executive Director, Daniel Turner. Welcome back, Daniel.
Thanks for having me on again.
So break it down. How is the UN going to save the planet?
Yeah, it's not. And like you just said, Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council, as is China. If the UN really wanted to tackle climate change, according to their philosophy, right? If you buy into man-made climate change, if they really wanted to address it, they would condemn these two countries. China is the world's largest polluter. They are the world's largest emitter of CO2. Where's the resolution condemning China? India is putting 2 coal plants a month online. Where's the condemnation of India, right? So there are things the United Nations, according to their own logic, should be doing. But instead, what do? They go to New York and they persecute us, Americans, fossil fuel workers, the men and women who are actually powering their building on the east side.
Yeah, isn't that funny? And by the way, if you talk to Americans and American children, they're very much aware of the personal responsibility they have for the climate. I don't think that they should be shamed into changing their behavior. I think that they should embrace technology that only the private sector can offer. Government force and capping ourselves at the knees economically isn't going to do anything to make the planet better.
No, and technology in the fossil fuel industry has gotten better. And this poor young woman who's being really manipulated by the left, Greta Thunberg, in the 16 years she's been alive, we have gotten smarter, cleaner, we've gotten more efficient when it comes to oil, gas, coal. And what's the result of that? The result of that is thriving economies and businesses and opportunity and freedom. And in the 16 years she's been on this planet, millions and millions of people from around the world have moved from poverty into the very beginnings of middle class and into independence. And again, there's no celebration of that. There's no celebration of...
But here's what's interesting, because as India and China move into the middle class and billions of people are seeing what it's like to embrace and participate in a free market economy, they're like, hey, give us our moment, Western Hemisphere. You've had your time in the blotted out sun thanks to your filthy, dirty cities, and we have cleaned up. So what can you do outside of a globalist international body like the UN? What can actually be done to change the behavior of people and governments in China and India, if anything?
Well, let the free market system work where necessary. And in the case of China, for example, you would think the men and women running for president on the Democrat side would support President Trump's sanctions. The best way to have China pollute less is to hurt their economy, and that would be sanctions, or the next logical step would be war. I know that sounds crazy to say, but if you really think, if you think China is the world's biggest polluter, and they are,
we should probably kill a few 100 million of them.
And if you think CO2 is literally, and they call it this, Kennedy, they call it an existential threat. Well, if it is, and you say AOC has said this is our World War II. Well, if it is, are you advocating war? Clearly, I'm being a devil's advocate here, but the UN and these people need to either take their rhetoric and own it, or they need to come to the table with free market solutions that empower people, bring about prosperity, and that will ultimately, as we've seen in America, make us a healthier and cleaner planet.
Absolutely. Everyone wants a healthier, cleaner planet. I just don't want to be forced to do anything because some do-gooders at the General Assembly are telling me to, when those friggin' hypocrites are flying around in gilded little jets.
Exactly. They've had 7 climate summits so far this year, and they've had it in Abu Dhabi.
You know what else they've had? Free drinks and fancy hotel rooms because they shove it.
It's nice.
Daniel, thank you so much. So nice. We got to get there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.